December 21st, 2012. According to the conspiracy theories, preppers, and doomsday believers around the world, there was supposed to be it. The end. The Mayan long count calendar was ending, and the popular media had convinced millions that the catastrophe was coming. The headlines were something like this: Apocalypse 2012, the truth about the end of the world. Or something like 2012 Mayan apocalypse rumors have dark sides. NASA warns. This is the story of how a quiet, unassuming family man meticulously planned for the end of the world, only to bring tragedy to the people he claimed to love. A story of secret bunkers, double lives, and a devastating crime that shocked a community and left investigators unraveling a web of paranoia and preparation. Imagine turning on the news in 2011-2012. Every other week there is another special about the end of the world. The History Channel, Discovery, major news networks, everyone's talking about it. And it wasn't just conspiracy theories anymore. Regular people, like your neighbor, co-workers, family members, were stockpiling water, buying emergency supplies, just buying some random stuff to just keep stocking in their houses. Some were even building bunkers. The panic was real. In the United States especially, because survivalist culture runs deep, rooted in Cold War, paranoia, and the American myth of radical self-reliance. To footnote that, in the United States, home to an estimated of 20 million preppers, and is the largest survivalist community in the world. But what is survivalist? Survivalists, or preppers, as they often call, are people who actively prepare for major disruption to society. Natural disaster, economic collapse, pandemics, or total societal breakdowns. They stock food, water, medical supplies, and learn survival skills like fire building and shelter construction. For most, it's about self-sufficient if things go wrong. There is something compelling about the mentality, the discipline, the resourcefulness, but this story isn't about the abstract appeal of survivalism. It's about two people who crossed paths in high school, in Oregon, and how that connection will eventually lead somewhere darker. To understand what happened in 2012 at Peter Keller's house, we need to go back farther. Around 1985-1987, that's when Peter Keller first knew Lynette Rocha. The details of the early connections remain unclear, whether they were friends, classmates, or simply aware of each other in passing when they were 16, 17 years old. Years after high school, they reconnect as adults, around the age of 22-23. Lynette thought Peter was really sweet, and almost immediately Peter began pushing for something permanent. Within 3 months of dating, he was already proposing marriage. Not once, but repeatedly. He wanted commitment. He wanted forever. Lynette hesitated. To her, marriage felt overwhelming. Too much commitment, too fast. She wasn't ready. But her family saw something different. His sister, watching Peter's persistent devotion, encouraged Lynette to reconsider. He seems like a good man. Stable, kind. In a world where good partners were hard to find, maybe she should take the chance. The pressure mounted. Her sister's words echoed in her mind, and slowly Lynette's resistance softened. Perhaps she was being too cautious. Perhaps this was the love looked like. Perhaps this was what love looked like. So Lynette said yes. They married and built a life together, welcoming their daughter Kaylin into the world. Years into the marriage, in videos she recorded while working on her scrapbooking business, Lynette would speak about Peter with genuine affection. She described him as loving, supportive, the person she chose to build a life with, a devoted father to her daughter. To everyone on the outside, her family, friends, neighbors, they were just another suburban family. Peter was quiet and reserved, the kind of guy who kept to himself or seemed devoted to his wife and daughter. Lynette, despite suffering from a chronic pain after a working injury, remained positive, pouring her energy into her crafts and selling them online. And the daughter Kaylin was in college, working as a video game tester while pursuing her passion for environmental protection and game design. A normal family, a normal life. But Peter Keller had a secret. something consuming. For Peter, this wasn't just some casual interest. This wasn't the kind of survivalism where you read a few articles online, watch some YouTube videos, YouTube tutorials, maybe go camping on the weekend with your emergency kit. No. Peter Keller's survivalism was different. It was all-consuming, it was compulsive, and it was something his family barely understood. A shadow side of him they couldn't fully see, growing darker and more elaborate with each passing years. He wasn't just preparing to survive. He had a mission, a project that will take over his life for the next 8 years, a project that requires physical labor and thousands of dollars, a project that would demand every free weekend, every spare moment, every ounce of energy he had. Peter Keller was going to build a bunker. Not just any bunker, a fortress, hiding deep in Cascade Mountains, carving into the side of hill, camouflaged so perfectly that you could walk right past it and never know it was there. A two-level structure, 20 feet underground, reinforced with logs he cut and hauled himself, complete with running water, electricity, heating, and enough supplies to last for months, maybe years. And he was going to do it alone, in secret, while maintaining the facade of a normal suburban life. The project began in 2004, and nobody, not his wife, not his daughter, not a single person who knew him, had any idea what was really happening in those woods, or what Peter was thoroughly preparing for. Had you ever met someone who rejected the way the world functioned? Someone angry about how banks exploit people, how social media manipulate us into endless consumption? Peter Keller was one of them. He resented society's structure. He harbored a deep, crowded dating back to his teenage years, a resentment that festered quietly for decades. He suffered from low self-esteem and obsessed over how others perceived him, convinced that the world was rigged against people like him. So he built Escape. For 8 years, every Friday and weekend, Peter retreated into the forest. 9 hours a day, he hauled supplies up to the mountains, cut trees, dug into the air. Thousands of dollars spent on materials, food, weapons, generators, axes, vodka, candy. He even built a wood-burning stove from scratch. His family knew he had some survivalist projects in the woods, but they had no idea of the skills, no idea of the arsenal he was building. At home, he maintained the perfect facade. He supported Lynette through her chronic pain, both financial and emotionally. He spent time with Kaylin. He went to work every day as a computer technician. To everyone around him, he was just Peter. Quiet, reserved. But in the videos he recorded alone in the woods, a different Peter emerged. He spoke calmly, methodically, like someone who had already accepted what was coming. Yet, his hands betrayed him. Constant fidgeting, smile, anxious moments revealing the turmoil in Bena. Mental health experts who later analyzed the footage noted clear signs of major depressive disorders and severe anxiety. In these videos, Peter revealed his true feelings. He felt knocked back financially. He believed his wife was going to suck up all the money out of him. He thought of continuing to work, of supporting a family, of living a normal suburb life. It freaked him out. He wanted something different. He wanted to live in his bunker, rob banks, rob pharmacies, take what he wants, live off the grid for as long as he could. That sounded exciting to him, not boring, not suffocating. And he wouldn't have to worry about Lynette and Kaylin anymore. Their needs, their financial, their life, it will just be him. By early 2012, his videos took on an urgency. The time was getting closer, maybe 3 months away. He mentioned that part of the project, though he never explicitly stated what it meant. His goal was to survive in the woods for 10 years. But there was a problem you probably already noticed. He never mentioned bringing his wife and daughter with him. They didn't know where the bunker was. They weren't part of the plan. We don't know if Peter believed in the Mayan calendar prophecy, like million other Americans did, but his world, the world he was living in, was going to end in 2012. Just not in December. It was in April 22nd of 2012. In the quiet neighborhood of North Bend, Washington, something was burning. Neighbors looked out of the window that morning and saw flames. Angry orange tongues crawling up the Keller family home, consuming the walls, reaching skyward. Black smoke billowed into the air. The cracking, popping, and sound of wood being devoured by fire filled the streets. But there were no screams. No one running from the house, calling for help. No signs of life at all. Just fire and an eerie, terrible silence. When firefighters arrived at 8:45 a.m., they moved quickly to contain the blaze. But within moments, they realized something was catastrophically wrong. This wasn't an accident. On the kitchen stove, still burning, they found a 5-gallon gasoline canister. The stuff burning had been turning on deliberately. The heat had melted the plastic, spilling gasoline across the stove top, transforming it into calculated inferno. Throughout the house, they discovered more canisters. 2-gallon containers strategically placed in different rooms. Someone hadn't just wanted this house to burn. They had wanted it to burn fast, burn hot, and obliterate everything inside. Someone had planned this meticulously, but the fire department arrived in time. They extinguished the flame before the house could become the crematorium someone had designed, before the evidence could be erased. Then came the discovery that transformed everything. In the bedroom, they found her, 41-year-old Lynette Keller, a single gunshot wound to the head, dead in her bed. In another room, 18 years old Kayleen Keller, also shot in the head. The family dog, Dino, the same dog that had accompanied Peter to the mountains every weekend, the same dog that appeared in Lynette's scrapbooking videos, shot and killed, even the family cat. An scary day throughout the house. Investigators found something that made their blood run cold. An homemade pipe bomb, sophisticated enough to level the entire structure and incinerate everyone inside. It had failed to detonate. If it had gone off, there would have been nothing left. No evidence, no bodies to identify, just ash and rubble, and questions that could never be answered. Just erasure. This wasn't an arson investigation anymore. This was a family annihilation, a double homicide, an attempted obliteration of an entire family's existence, meticulously planned, brutally executed, and Peter Keller was gone. After the firefighters established that this was a homicide investigation, police and investigators started to collect the information that they could find in the Keller's house. Everything from photos, from notebooks, from albums, everything that can figure out or can crack the code where Peter was. The investigation team established a command center. Maps covers the wall, photos from Peter's computer spread across tables. Detective hunched over each image, searching for the single detail that will crack the case. A shadow, a landmark, anything that could pinpoint where is the bunker, where this bunker exists. They knew it was somewhere near North Bend. That narrowed the things down, but only barely. Near North Bend still encompassed a dozen of possible locations across hundreds of square miles of dense forest. The bunker could be anywhere, so they analyzed everything methodically. The angle of sunlight in the photographs, it could indicate direction. The type of tree, elevation, terrain features like valleys and streams. They could cross-reference this with topographical maps. They examined every pixel, every shadow, every possibility. but nothing gave them a location. And then one detective noticed something that didn't belong. She was studying a photography that seemed just wrong, out of the place among all the others. It wasn't a construction photo, it wasn't a documentation of the bunker, it wasn't even a particularly good photograph. It showed a shopping plaza, just a store, a parking lot, ordinary suburban sprawl. Unremarkable, forgettable. But something about it nagged at her. The framing was odd. The shopping plaza occupied only the bottom 20% of the image, just a strip at the frame's edge. The remaining 80% was mountains, tree, and turning through the landscape barely visibly but unmistakable. Power lines cutting across the peak. Why would Peter take this picture? She studied his other photos. His documentation was meticulously, every image purposefully, progress photos, technical demonstrations, supply inventories. He wasn't the type that wastes film on random shots. Then it clicked. He wasn't photographing the plaza. He was photographing the mountains from the plaza. He was documenting what his location looked like from civilization. A sideline, a reference point. From his bunker looking down towards the city, what will he see? From the city looking up towards his bunker, what will someone see? It was operational intelligence. The detective pointing at the power lines. Those specific lines served a particular power station in the mountains. The angle of the peak in the background. Those particular summit visible from only certain vantage point. If you knew which shopping plaza this was taken from and you knew which peaks appear in that exact configuration, you could triangulate. Within hours, they had it. The photo was taken from a shopping plaza on North Bend's east side. The power lines led to a service station higher in the mountains. The peak in the ground, visibly from this specific angle, could only be seen from a narrow band of terrain near Rattlesnake Ridge, about 200 yards of the main trail. On a steep hillside beside a stream, one photograph, one moment of vanity or reconnaissance, one image Peter thought was important enough to keep. It gave him away completely. Well, they found where his bunker was, at least. Sheriff Rar didn't hesitate. This wasn't a moment for caution or procedure. They need SWAT. They need the best trackers. They need a tactical plan to approach a fortified position held by a desperate man. Because this wasn't going to be a simple arrest. Peter Keller was armed, trained. Sitting inside a bunker he had spent 8 years designed specifically to keep intruders out. He had the high ground, a massive tactical advantage. He had rifles with scopes, meaning he could spot them coming from hundreds of yards away, long before they could reach him. He had enough ammunition to sustain a prolonged standoff. And most critically, he has nothing to lose. His family was dead. His whole life had ended the moment he pulled the trigger. He knew exactly what was coming, prison or death. Either way, there was no going back. This wasn't going to be an easy arrest. This was going to be a siege. When you need to file someone in the warden desk who doesn't want to be found, you need someone special. Not a regular officer, not even a K9 unit with dogs. You need a human tracker. Someone who can read the forest like you and I read books. Someone who can examine a broken tweet and tell you not just that someone passed through, but when, how fast they were moving whenever they knew they were being pursued. The tracker they bought him was one of the best in the Pacific Northwest. Years of training, years of practice in terrains exactly like this, he had learned from master of the craft. He could look at a footprint in mud and determine a person's approximately weight, their walking speed, whether they were in hurry. He could spot what trackers call signs, evidence of human passage, detail that most people will walk past without seeing. A tiny scuff mark on moss, a stone turned over, showing its wet underside, grass bent and not yet sprung back up. For the tracker, these weren't details. They were a story riding across the forest floor. When the call came about Peter Keller, he already knew the case. Everyone in law enforcement knew. Suspect barricaded in a bunker in the mountains, armed, desperate, extremely dangerous. This was exactly the situations where a tracker became essential. The tracker met with the tactical team to map their approach. They showed him the estimate location based on the shopping plaza photography. He studied topography maps, tracing water sources, analyzing terrains, considering the route a man like Peter would choose, a man who had spent 8 years preparing for exactly this scenario. If Peter was intelligent, and everything suggested he was, his bunker would be positioned to observe multiple approach routes. He would dominate the main trails. He would see everyone coming from a distance, so they couldn't use the main trails. The tracker traced a different path on the map, a path through the thickest forest. A route Peter would never expect because it was suicide. Dense brush, steep terrains, the kind of ground no sane person would attempt. But that was precisely what it might work. They would move slow, move silent, advantage in inches, not feet. 7 hours, maybe more. Crawling through mud and undergrowth, soaked and exhausted, every moment knowing a single mistake meant gunfire. But that was the only way to do it. There was no other choice. 3 dozens SWAT officers mobilized before dawn in April 27. They had been briefed on everything, studied the bunker photos, knew exactly what they were facing. Each officer wore full tactical wear, camouflage uniforms, face paint applied in careful patterns to break up their silhouettes, making them part of the forest itself. They carried rifles, flashbangs, tear gas, body armor, communication equipment, but the most crucial element wasn't wear. It was discipline. One wrong move, one careless sound, and everything would collapse into chaos. Here's what they did. The tracker and his partner dressed as hikers. Bright jackets, red backpacks, water bottles. They looked like a young couple who would wander off the main trail, naive tourists, harmless and lost. If Peter was watching through binoculars or a rifle scope, they needed to see people who posed no threat. They started up the mountains at 6 a.m. The main SWAT team followed 30 minutes behind, moving through the forest like ghosts, completely silenced, and the tracker was reading the landscape like a book written in broken braces and disturbed air. Every step, he scanned the ground, looking for disturbances, signs of recent passage. Within 5 steps into the dense forest, he found them, footprints. Partial impressions in soft dirt near the trail, fresh, from the last few days. The tread pattern matched the boots Peter wore in the bunker photographs. He gestured to his partner without a word. They were on the right track. Deep into the forest, more signs appeared. A broken branch snapped at the chest height, showing fresh wood beneath the bark, most disturbed and pressed down. Something heavy had been placed there recently. Peter had come through here, recently, carrying something substantial. Maybe supplies, moving between his hidden vehicle and the bunker, back and forth, establishing a pattern. The trail led them off the main hiking path into dense, brutal terrain, fallen logs to climb over, thick brush to push through, every step a calculated risk of a twisted ankle in the mud, intentional. Peter has chosen this route to discourage casual hikers, to make him think it was too difficult and turn back. But this tracker wasn't a casual hiker. Behind them, the SWAT team had abandoned walking. They were crawling, hands and knees into the mud, moving a few feet, then freezing to listen. Every sound analyzed, evaluate. 7 hours of this, maybe more. each officer knowing that a single mistake could trigger a firefight they might not survive. The officers communicate only with hand signs, no radios, no voices. Why? Because a radio signal could be intercepted. If Peter had a police scanner, and he almost certainly did, he might be listening right now, monitoring every transmission. Complete silence, complete stilled, complete vulnerability. As they climbed higher, the terrain turned into treacherous. Mud made everything slippery. One officer started sliding backward down the stove. Two others grabbed him, held him steady, pulling him back up without a sound. Nobody made a sound. The trucker, still ahead in his role as a lost tourist with his partner, saw something that made his pulse spike. A barely visible trail branching to the right. Not a normal path. Too subtle. Too deliberately obscure. Branches had been placed across it, attempting to hide it from casual observation. But to these trained eyes, it was unmistakable. A deliberate concealment, a marker. He pulled out his phone and texted the tactical commander. Found it, 200 yards ahead, going silent. He and his partner abandoned their tourist character. They dropped to the ground and began crawling like a SWAT team behind them, because now they were in the kill zone. Peter Keller bunker was close. Close enough to matter, close enough to be dangerous. And if Peter saw them, if he suspected for even 1 second that the police were coming, this would turn into a shootout in seconds. A man with nothing to lose, 4 feet underground, superior position and firepower. There will be no negotiation, no surrender, just gunfire and blood. Now it was a tomb waiting to be opened. SWAT officers moved immediately. Flashbangs detonated into the opening, brilliant explosions of light and sound designed to disorient, to stunt, to strip away any tactical advantage from anyone inside. The forest erupted in white noise and blind flash. They enter, weapons raised, moving through the structure with practiced precision, checking every corner, every shadow, every possible threat. The bunker matched the photographs exactly. 2 levels, multiple rooms, shelters lined with supplies, food, water, medical kits, canned goods organized with obsessive care. A generator hummed in the corner, a wood stove waited for winter. Weapons and ammunition arranged with meticulous precision on custom-built racks. And on the lower level, 30 feet down from the upper chamber, they found him, Peter Keller, dead. Medical personnel entered, but there was nothing to do. No revival, no intervention, no second chances. Peter Keller had been dead for hours, possibly since the night before. His body had begun to cool, rigor mortis setting in. Time moving forward while he remained frozen in his final moment. The autopsy would later confirm what sense made evident. Peter had placed a pistol in his mouth and pulled the trigger. The bullet traveled upward through his brain and exited through the crown of his skull. Death was instantaneous, certain, absolute. The blood-spattered parents told the story. He would have stood on the upper level of the bunker when he did it. His body had been falling through the opening, 30 feet of vertical drop, landing on the concrete below. With one hand, he still clutched a pistol, not the murder weapon. That was elsewhere. Pulled that back up he'd been carrying. Insurance against capture, a promise to himself. The other hand, a small battery-powered radio. And here's what made investigators' blood run cold. The radio was still on, still turned to a local news station, the volume low but audible. Peter Keller had spent his final hours listening to reports about himself, news coverage of the manhunt, updates about the search, reports that investigators had found his bunker location, tactical teams closing, the nose triggering. He was listening to every word, he knew they were coming, and he will make his choice. He will not be captured. He will not face trial. He will not spend decades in prison. He will not give investigators the satisfaction of interrogation. He will end it himself. Sheriff Sue Raft stood at the edge of the bunker opening, looking down at the scene below. 6 days. From the murders on April 22nd through this moment on April 28th. 6 days. The time it took from the killing of his wife and daughter to his own death. 6 days that Peter Keller had survived in his fortress, listening to the world close in on him before choosing the only escape route he had left. He will spend 8 years preparing this bunker to sustain him for decades of isolation and survival. He will lasted less than a week. The irony was absolute. The fortress he built to protect him had become his tomb. The supplies he will stockpile will go untouched. The weapons he will carefully organize will never be fired. The generator he had installed will sit idle. Rahart gave the order to secure the scene. Every square inch needed documentation, every weapon catalogued and photographed, every piece of evidence preserved. Nothing overlooked, nothing forgotten, because it wasn't just a crime scene anymore. It was a window into the mind of a killer. Every object in this bunker told a story about his paranoia, his planning, his obsession, his delusion about how the world worked and what his role in it should be. Every shelf revealed his thinking. Every weapon reflected his fantasies. Every supply demonstrated his fear. Investigators will spend weeks down here, piece by piece, building a psychological profile of Peter Keller. Understanding how a seemingly normal man, a quiet husband, a devoted father, had become capable of such a calculated violence. The answers were all around them, buried in the air, preserved in the bunker that he was meant to be his sanctuary. Instead, it had become his confession. But now, let's talk about Peter Keller's psychology, because this case is genuinely disturbing on a psychological level. Just a quick disclaimer, I am not a psychologist. I just really passionate about true crime, and I like to investigate a little bit about the psychological analysis that people with studies have done in people that commit crimes, just to try to understand what was happening in their mind. This is not for justifications. This is only for information about like what was the complete scenario. I'm not justifying anyone. This is just pure information. So let's talk about Peter Keller's psychology. Peter Keller spent 8 years planning to murder his family. 8 years. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a sudden mental breakdown or a moment of rage. This was patient, methodical, calculating planning. The work of someone who knew exactly what he wanted to do and was willing to take years to prepare for it. And during all those years, he maintained a flawless facade. He went to work every day as a computer technician, performing his role with precision. He came home and acted as a devoted husband to Lynette, supporting her through a chronic pain, showing her affection, demonstrating care. He spent time with Kaylin, appearing to be a present father. Lynette's family welcomed him. Sibylle saw nothing wrong. Peter was quiet, reserved, maybe a little bit obsessed with the survivalist hobby, but fundamentally harmless. That was everyone's belief. Except he wasn't harmless. He was living a complete double life, and he was extraordinarily skilled at it. That level of sustained deception over that many years, it suggests severe personality disorders, narcissists, and antisocial traits. What psychologists might classify as psychopathic characteristics. He could compartmentalize his entire existence. One weekend, he will disappear into the mountains, building his furnace, documenting his plans, recording videos diaries where he discussed just crimes with clinical calm, as if it were just another task on his to-do list. Then he will return home, kiss his wife goodnight, and sleep beside her while harboring plans for her death. That's not normal human behavior. That's someone who fundamentally lacks empathy, someone incapable of genuinely connect with others on a human level. What makes Peter's case even more psychologically disturbing is his particular constellation of trails, a victim mentality combining with grandiosity, a classic narcissist patterns that experts recognize immediately. In his videos he complained constantly. He felt knocked back financially. He believes his wife was going to suck all the money out of him. He resented having to work to pay bills and support his family. He spoke about himself with pity. I'm ugly, nobody cares about me, I never have anything. I try to make it in this world and it just isn't happening. But here's the devastating irony. Lynette loved him. She was grateful for everything he provided. She worked despite chronic pain, struggling through her limitations to contribute financially to the family through her scrapbooking business. Kaylin was preparing for college, excited about her future, trusting her father. Peter had a stable job, a home, a family that cared about him. But Peter couldn't see any of it. He could only see himself as a victim of circumstances, a victim of his family needs, a victim of society that demand he work and contribute. He externalized all responsibility. It was his upbringing's fault, his appearance's fault, his wife's fault for needing financial support, society's fault for making him work, never his own choices, never his own failures. And this is where the psychological becomes truly dark. Peter didn't view his wife and daughter as independent human beings with their own lives, dreams, and futures. He viewed them as an extension of himself, as obstacles to his fantasy. He didn't see them as people who would suffer. He saw them as problems that needed to be eliminated so he could live out his survivalist escape fantasy. They were chess pieces to be removed from the board. The fantasy itself is another crucial element of his psychology. Peter spends a year preparing to survive for a decade in his bunker. He documented everything meticulously. He made elaborate plans. He stockpiled weapons, food, medical supplies. He talked about robbing banks and pharmacies, living this exciting off-grid life, finally free from the constant of responsibilities and family obligation. But when reality finally arrived, he lasted 6 days. 6 days before he chose to unalive himself, rather than face the actual consequences of his actions. His entire ideology of being a strong survivalist was revealed as pure fantasy, an escape fantasy, a way to rationalize his desire to flee responsibility, to abandon adult life, to reject the boring reality of supporting a family. When he was actually confronted with genuinely danger, with real tactical pressure, with actual survival requirements, he gave up immediately. Because Peter Keller wasn't strong, he wasn't resilient, he wasn't a survivor. He was a coward. He killed 2 defenseless people, his wife and daughter, while they slept in their beds. He committed arson to destroy evidence. Then, when armed officers appeared outside his bunker, when real consequences finally approached, he put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. He never faced any genuinely challenge. He never demonstrated any real courage. His entire persona was constructed on a fantasy of being a thought survivalist, a man preparing for anything. The reality? He couldn't. He couldn't handle 1 week in his own bunker. The video diaries he recorded are particularly revealing from a psychological perspective and deeply unsettling. He would do retakes, multiple takes, of the same message, trying to get the phrasing exactly right. Think about that. These were videos he believed would burn in the house fire. Private confessions to himself that no one will ever see. And yet he needed to present himself a certain way. He needed to control how he appeared. even when he thought no audience would witness it. That extreme narcissist, the need to control his narrative regardless of circumstances, the requirement that his self-perception be perfected even in complete isolation. In those videos, he spoke about unaliving his family with a disturbing flatness of affect. I will finally do what I have to do and get it out of the way, he said, as if discussing taking out the trash rather than unaliving his wife and daughter. Mental health experts who analyzed the footage noted clear signs of major depression disorder, but they also noted something else: the fidgeting, the anxiety, unmistakable awareness of what he was planning. He wasn't experiencing a psychological breakdown. He wasn't detached from reality. He knew exactly what he was doing. He understood it. It was wrong. He simply didn't care. His emotional disconnect was profound, a sociopathic ability to contemplate violence without genuinely feelings. So why unaliving them instead of simply living? You will be asking. That's the fundamental question that haunts investigators. If he hated his life so much, if he resented supporting his family so deeply, why not simply divorce Lynette and disappear into the mountains? Why not abandon his responsibilities and pursue his bunker fantasy alone? There are several psychological theories. Some experts believe it was narcissist possession. He viewed his wife and daughter as his property, extension of his will. He couldn't tolerate them existing independently without him. If he couldn't have them in his life or in his terms, they couldn't exist at all, completely controlled or completely erased. There was no middle ground in his thinking. Others theorized it was absolutely elimination witnesses and obstacles. They knew about the bunker, they could report him to the police. They were loose ends they need tying up before he could execute his escape plan. That make a little bit more sense because he also killed the dog that was following him to the bunker. But again, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not quite sure, but that explains why he killed the pet. Some suggest financial motivation. He didn't want to pay alimentary or child support. Through his theory crumbles under scrutiny signs, he was planning to become a bank robber anyway, a fantasy that would have left him far more vulnerable legally. But the darkest theory, the one that actually makes the most psychological sense with his behavior, is that the unalivings were never a byproduct of his bunker plans. The unalivings were always the point. The bunker wasn't really about survival or preparedness. It was a justification framework, a narrative he constructed to rationalize violence. Those 8 years weren't simply preparation to survival. They were knowing that he would do while everyone around him remains clueless. The bunker gave him a permission to think about crimes. It gave him a story he could tell himself about. It was necessary, and that's what makes Peter Keller so terrifying. He wasn't obviously dangerous. He didn't fit the cultural stereotype of the violent person. He was quiet, polite, employed, married, integrated into his community. He lived a normal suburban life for years to planning a crime. Lots of people have time-consuming hobbies. Lots of people are interested in survivalism and emergency preparedness. Lots of people are quiet and reserved. None of those traits automatically indicate danger. Peter Keller represents something deeply unsettling about human nature: the capacity for compartmentalization, for sustaining deception, for living a double life so convincingly that even the people closest to you have absolutely no idea what you are truly thinking. His wife loved him and believed he loved her in return. His daughter trusted him completely. His in-laws welcomed him into their family with open hearts, and he was planning to commit a crime the entire time. So that's it. That's Peter Keller case. 8 years of relentless deception, 2 innocent people unalive, a man who spent almost a decade building an elevated fortress design. It's dark, it's disturbing, it's the kind of cases that stay like with you. What I wanted to cover it because it's a case that deserves attention. No sensationalism, but genuinely understanding. The 2012 Doomsday Context, the elaborate bunker construction, the human tracker who read the forest like a book, all of it matters. All of it tells us something about how someone like Peter Keller could hide in plain sight for so long, could maintain his facade through years of deception, could plan something so genius while appearing so ordinary. Lynette and Kaylin didn't deserve what happened to them, not even remotely. Lynette was doing her best despite chronic pain that limited her daily life. Kaylin was just beginning her adulthood, full of dreams about video game design and environmental protection. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and Peter took all of that away. Not in a moment of rage, but through years of calculating planning because of his own selfishness, his narcissism, and his delusional worldview. If this deep dive gave you a complete picture of what happened, not just the surface details, but the psychological behind it, the investigation, the tactical response, everything, then I have done what I set out to do. If you made this far, thank you sincerely for watching. Seriously, your attention means something. If you found this informative, please leave a like. If you want to more deep dives that explore not just what happened, but why it happened, and subscribe. And please share your thoughts in the comments. What's your take on this case? What's your theory about these motivations? Do you think there were signs that could have been caught? Do you think anyone could have seen this coming? Take care of yourself, be good to each other, offline and online, and I'll see you in the next video.